For most of us, home exists as a sanctuary that keeps the world outside at bay. For some, eerie sounds and visions turn their safe havens into prisons of fear. They believe that ghosts are living out a curse to inhabit their homes, forcing them to confront the haunting terror of the unexplained. Since the day they married in 1987, police officer Tom Brown and his wife Linda had dreamed of owning a home. In 1996, the Browns, with their 2 children, moved into a 3-bedroom brick house on Twin Oaks Court in East Peoria, Illinois. Their dream had finally come true. It quickly became a nightmare on the very first night in the house. Tom and Linda were fast asleep when violent noises rose from the basement 1 floor below.
It sounded like somebody was going through all of our stuff in the basement. I got up, I thought, can't be. So I went downstairs, and you could hear just plain as day, somebody's moving boxes around, throwing stuff around. It sounds like somebody was mad, just throwing stuff. Nothing's moving. Nothing's going anywhere. You could hear it, but you couldn't see nothing.
Convinced that the stress of the move had been too much, Tom and Linda dismissed the incident until the terrifying sounds returned the following evening. This time, even louder. Doors knocked and slammed. Heavy footsteps shuffled on the linoleum kitchen floor, just outside their 3-year-old daughter Chelsea's room.
I heard squeaks on the floor, and it was just like someone was walking in the floor. I kept hearing these noises again, and I was just really scared. And I went back in, I sat on the edge of her bed, and I still didn't see anyone out there, but I heard the noises, and it was unbelievable. But it was like someone was watching Chelsea and I.
Tom and Linda were beginning to believe that someone was watching them, someone they couldn't see. Then one night, Tom caught a glimpse of something he'll never forget.
And the cat is in the living room, hissing and screeching and that, like he's in a cat fight. And all of a sudden, I saw this person dart into my son's bedroom. I got up, I ran in there as fast as I could. Nobody, nothing. I checked the closet, checked the bed, checked everything, and there was nobody anywhere.
The Browns, who had always been skeptical about ghosts, began to fear that their new home was haunted.
I tried to be rational about it and try to figure out what was going on, and I never could come up with anything.
Frightened by the strange occurrences, Linda, who had become a believer, desperately wanted to move.
I had it. I told Tom this was our first house, and I said, we're moving. We are moving in springtime. I said, that's it. I can't handle hearing things all the time and scaring me half to death.
Tom, still searching for an explanation, went across the street to talk to Shirley Venyak. Her son had sold the house to Tom.
Well, I asked Shirley about noises or ghosts or anything in that, and she had got this dumbfounded look on her face like, I can't believe you said that. And then she said, you hear him too.
Shirley told Tom that her parents had built the house and lived there until the late 70s. Her father, Stuart Wall, known as a caring and generally happy man, suffered a stroke in 1974 that left him disabled and deeply depressed. The thought of being a burden to his family gnawed away at his will to live. One evening, he walked to the closet of the back bedroom, where the Browns' 2-year-old son now slept, pulled the belt from his pants, and hanged himself. Shirley discovered her father barely alive and cut him down. As he lay dying in her arms, she thought he was trying to say, I'm sorry. He never did. Shirley told Tom she believed the spirit of her father was trapped in their house, still trying to say, I'm sorry. The story finally convinced Tom that he and his family were living with the ghost of Stuart Wall. Tom felt helpless with nowhere to turn, until he read in the local papers about a man who investigated hauntings. Rob Conover, a former private investigator, used to dismiss those who believed in ghosts. Until one night when he set out to prove that a so-called haunted building was a fraud.
I was very sure there was nothing there, and things started to happen to prove otherwise. And I walked through the door, and as I did, it felt like thousands of little cold icicles blew through me. And it got quiet. And I said, they're gone. And I think it was at that point, I said, there's something to this. And when I came out the next morning, I had a whole different attitude.
This experience made Conover a believer, forcing him to change his title from private investigator to paranormal investigator. From then on, he devoted himself entirely to ghost busting. After he spoke with Tom about the supposed ghost of Stuart Wall, Conover reluctantly agreed to investigate.
There are a lot of times I have to go tell people, no, you don't have a spirit. This is what's making the noise, whether it be a unruly refrigerator or air circulating through the vents at a certain time, causing a sound that sounds almost human-like footsteps or moaning or screaming or things like that.
The Ghostbuster claims, however, that he can tell when a ghost is real. He says he is sensitive to what he calls energies in houses that contain spirits. He searches for supposed cold spots, which he says signal the presence of a ghost.
When I walk into an area where there's a spirit, there's a feeling that comes over me that is very hard for me to describe. The closest I can get is to say it's like a cool electrical shock without any pain, from toes to head. After the initial interview with Tom and Linda, I did a walkthrough and definitely picked up feelings. This is the room where it took place, isn't it?
Conover sensed the ghost in the same places where the Browns had heard the noises. He was certain that Stuart Wall had become a tormented spirit, prowling the halls of what was once his home, and now his purgatory. Conover resolved to help the ghost find his way out of the land of the living and into another level. Paranormal investigator Rob Conover arrived at the Browns' house armed with equipment to do battle with the ghost of Stuart Wall. 20 years before, Wall had committed suicide in the back bedroom. Conover believes that his tormented spirit now prowled its halls, and he was confident that he could coax this troubled spirit through the light, his term for moving ghosts from this world to the next.
When we pass away, we're all confronted with the light. And for us to stay on this side and not go through the light, the reasons for that are because we're attached to a person, place, or object on this side that we feel we have to protect or be with.
Conover and his assistant began to walk through the house looking for Stuart's presence. Tom Brown, the owner of the home, and Shirley Vanyak, Stuart's daughter, followed closely behind them.
I felt Stuart's presence. These stockings began to go back and forth by themselves. And I said out loud, so Stuart, you have my attention now. Do I go in the house or do I go in the basement? And at that point there was a loud bang in the basement. So we went down into the basement and his presence felt big time.
They focused a video camera on the room, lit several candles, and turned out the lights. With the Bible in his hand, Rob called out to the spirit, asking it to show itself to Tom and Shirley.
Stuart, I know you're down here. I explained to Stuart that God is a merciful God, and Stuart had been a good person all of his life. He had helped many, many, many people, and I believed that God had a place for him on the other side and was waiting for him.
After more than an hour, the supposed ghost still had not responded to Conover, but the investigator was certain of the spirit's presence.
I could see Stuart's ectoplasm. The ectoplasm is the energy that goes in front of a spirit that helps him move through the air. It's made up of electricity and energy. And I was able to see that.
Again, he pleaded with the spirit to appear, now worried that it might totally ignore his request.
And when I had about reached the end of my rope is when the hallway in the basement filled with this beautiful blue light that was very dense. You couldn't see through it at all.
I didn't see the light at first until Shirley nudged me and said, "See, look." And then I moved my head over and saw it, and if I would never saw it, I'd never believed it had happened. To me, it was like a bluish green light. It was extremely bright, like a welder welding.
Then, in a matter of seconds, the blue light faded away.
It was at that point that I took my Bible and I stood up and made contact with Stuart and helped Stuart cross over into the light.
The house felt like you had 150 guests in the house and you was cram-packed and you couldn't fit another person in, and all of a sudden everybody just left and shut the lights off. It was just a very empty feeling, like nobody was there no more. And you was all by yourself.
Conover says at that moment the ghost of Stuart Wall left the house forever. The investigator immediately turned to the camera, excited about seeing the event on tape. This is what they saw.
Yeah. Guys. Oh, look at the light.
Tom, being a policeman, said, "I want to look at your videotape because I know that light's on the videotape." We put the videotape in. You heard our conversation, but there was no light on the videotape. And Shirley said, "Why?" And I said, "Because we were the only ones meant to see that light."
Since that night, calm has returned to the house on Twin Oaks Court. The mysterious sounds and terrifying visions are gone. Did the ghost of Stuart Wall pace the floors of this house? Was that spirit finally ushered to another world during this ritual? Skeptics say emphatically that ghosts do not exist, and that logical reasoning can explain all anomalies linked to spirits. Professor of psychology Terence Hines believes the Browns' ghost is a figment of their imagination.
When you go into any new house, new to you, there are going to be strange sounds and events that you're not familiar with. And so if you go in thinking, my God, somebody committed suicide in Johnny's room, and you hear something odd, it's very easy to think, oh, maybe that was a ghost.
It was particularly easy for Linda Brown, who had grown up next door to the Walls and was 6 years old when Stuart Wall committed suicide. As a child, she didn't know how he died, but as an adult, she learned the tragic truth. Hines thinks this must have contributed to Tom and Linda's conclusion that the strange sounds and visions were caused by a ghost. Hines says this is natural. The human mind is actually pre-programmed to enforce order onto strange experiences.
The human brain is set up to create perceptions, especially when we're faced with kind of random nebulous stimuli. The brain frantically tries to wire them all together to make some coherent sense out of that.
Believers in ghosts like parapsychologist Lloyd Auerbach disagree that the ghost of Stuart was purely a function of Tom and Linda's perception. He argues that when several witnesses are reporting the same or similar experiences, as happened in the Brown house, those witnesses must be taken seriously.
It's a subjective experience experienced by many people across many years, which lends very much credibility to there being actually something there and that it wasn't just imagined by people. And that's what we look at, is how many people, how many witnesses there are, what kind of corroboration we get. Witness testimony in hauntings seems to be fairly consistent.
Eyewitness testimony is unconvincing because you can get eyewitnesses who will swear on the proverbial stack of Bibles that they've seen things that we clearly know don't exist. For example, you can find, if you go back to the Middle Ages, you can find people who swear that they saw witches flying on broomsticks across the sky. And I have no doubt that they really think they saw that.
Conover and the Browns are certain they saw a blue light. But Tom Flynn, a skeptic who has examined hauntings, says that if they did, it should have shown up on their videotape.
Video cameras respond to the same spectrum of colors that the human eye does. So if you're pointing a video camera at something and you see a blue light, so should it. So I think it's very revealing that these three people report that they've had this experience, and yet their own videotape doesn't verify it.
Flynn also says that several of Conover's claims that he feels a presence can move spirits through the light, and is able to see ectoplasm, are based on mythology commonly used by those